Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Post Up with David Grubb right here on Boot Crew Media. I, of course, am your host, David Grubb, and this will be, unfortunately, our last show in the studio for me as I get ready to move to Michigan tomorrow. So this is my last 24 hours in the city of New Orleans for a while, and I'm glad I get to share it with y'all. So, yesterday we talked about a lot about the reaction to what happened over the weekend. The two games the Pelicans played in Australia, their preseason openers, and what they did. Today we want to get into some individual players and what we saw and what we can expect going forward, or what we should expect going forward. And you have to start these things with Zion Williamson. It's no secret that Zion impressed in Australia, particularly in the first game where he scored 15 points, had 5 boards, 5 assists, and just looked quicker than everybody on the floor. Ran the floor well, played defense well, offensively, again, looked unstoppable at times. And yes, this was against lower competition. This wasn't NBA level competition. Again, the NBL is the 10th largest basketball league in the world, which is no small feat, but it isn't the biggest and it isn't the best. But it was very competitive, particularly in that first game. So to see Zion do very well in a game that the Pelicans actually had to compete to win in was very encouraging. Second night didn't play as much. Also with 2 other starters out, with Trey and Herb Jones sidelined. But you can see the dramatic shift in the narrative already for Zion Williamson. We saw when just his debut at Media Day was enough to drop his MVP odds in half from 500 to 1 to about 250 to 1. And now you're seeing the NBA start to kind of anticipate his return to the strata of league superstars. The predictions are there for him that from his look, from the physique, from the way that it looks like he's developing into his adult body and no longer the chubby kind of kid that came out of South Carolina and Duke. You start to mature. You're the fat moves to different places. The muscle goes to different places as you get older. And Zion is growing into his adult frame. So when you look at him and you look at the kind of shape that he's in and you look at the kind of motivation that he's had and what he's not only discussed, but the way he played and the reports that you've gotten from practice, then you start feeling a lot better about, you're not willing to go to 70 games just yet, even though he has reached that number before, but 60 games, sure. You start believing Zion will be there 60 games. He'll be there 65. Like this feels, and that could be fool's gold, and it could be chasing, a waterfall, but it feels different this time. More so than the physical part of it. More so than seeing that transformation. What makes this different is the mentality. And it's not just of Zion Williamson saying he wants to do well. He's always wanted to do well. But now the mental approach is that of a professional and an adult. The thing about Zion Williamson over the first 4 or 5 years of his career, it seemed as if he was not being coached or held accountable. I cannot speak for the improvement in the level of coaching, but I can say that he's being held accountable. And in turn, he is holding himself accountable. And in turn, he is interested in holding his teammates accountable. It's on Zion. It is his responsibility, not Jordan Poole's, not Trey Murphy's, not Herb Jones, not Jose Alvarado. It is Zion's responsibility to make sure that this team gets to where it's supposed to go. There will be no one else to blame, regardless of what you think of the coaching situation. There'll be no one to blame but Zion if things don't go well. And I say that not to be unfair to him, but this is the job when you are the franchise player. This is the responsibility that you take on. Success is to be shared between the organization, the players, the coaches, the fans. Failure is to be owned. And who's going to own the potential failure if the Pelicans don't make their way? No one will have the fingers pointed at them more directly than Zion Williamson. So to see where he has come into camp and started this preseason, not just looking like a very different Zion Williamson, but sounding and acting like a very different Zion Williamson. You would have to anticipate that this season he makes his return bid to be an all-star. You talked about the potential of Trey Murphy becoming an all-star. We'll talk about Trey at the end of the show. We've talked about that possibility of Trey Murphy becoming an all-star. The way Trey's going to do it is he's going to have to earn his way in as a reserve because he's just not going to get the votes. Not as a forward in the Western Conference. The competition is just too deep. He's still talking about LeBron James and Kevin Durant right there taking up a lion's share of the votes at forward. But Zion Williamson is the kind of player that captures people's imaginations, that they get excited about, that they want to see. Not that Trey doesn't play that kind of game, but again, New Orleans mixed with position, it's a very difficult mix for Trey. But Zion could, without BI around, without CJ around, with the ball in his hands more, certainly could up those numbers, the numbers that we saw last season, putting up, these impressive numbers in a very limited time. In his previous All-Star seasons, he averaged around 26.5 points between those seasons, 7 boards, 4 assists. 26, 7, and 4. Can you do that this season? Absolutely. Absolutely. If not better. And the expectations are here that he will do better. So I think that those are reasonable expectations that Zion Williamson is going to meet the league minimum of games played and get that 65. That he will be not only the on-court leader, but the vocal leader of the New Orleans Pelicans, and that he has definite potential to become an all-star for the third time in his career. We shall see, as I like to say. Let's move on to another guy who there's a lot of interest in, and that's Jeremiah Fears. And I think when you look at Jeremiah Fears, he is the most difficult rookie to place for the Pelicans since Jackson Hayes. Now, the problem with Jackson Hayes is I don't think Jackson Hayes was ever a basketball player. He may play basketball, but he's not a basketball player. That is not the concern with Jeremiah Fears. But the commonality between the two is they didn't get, enough on-court time in college for them to really start to mature as basketball players. Jeremiah Fears is right now the product of exceptional athletic ability. And you've seen Willie Green talk about the things that he can do physically that no one else can do. Talent-wise, with the basketball, with his speed, all of those things. The problem for Jeremiah Fears, just like it has been for Jackson Hayes, and this is the limited similarity I would give the two, is harnessing that physical ability and turning it into consistent play on the court. When the competition is not up to your level, as he was ahead of the curve in college and certainly ahead of the curve in high school, those things are easy to overcome when you are not disciplined or when you are not necessarily as experienced or as schooled in the subtleties of the game. And that's where Jeremiah Fears is missing. He's missing the subtleties. Those are things that come with time. I can show you the recipe, but that pinch of salt, that is a feel thing, right? When somebody says a pinch of salt, it's a feel. When they say pepper to taste, it's a feel thing. Like you know exactly how much oil you're going to use, but the seasonings are going to be different. Your base is consistent. The other things are going to go by how you feel that day and what you're reading from that recipe. And that's where Jeremiah Fears is that he's trying to figure out that balance between doing what's on the page and being an artist and filling in the gaps between the notes. And so when you watch him, you see his brain turning. You see him trying to strike that balance between the point guard that this team needs him to be and the scorer that he innately is. If the Pelicans are going to get the best out of him, though, scoring can't be his number one goal when he gets in the game. The Pelicans have a lot of scorers, people who, when they get the basketball, are going to want to put it in the basket first. Whether you're talking Trey, Jordan Poole, Zion Williamson, Jordan Hawkins, these are guys that are going to, when they get the ball, they are looking to score immediately. And you are feeding those guys as the young point guard. So to balance that, the first thing he needs to work on, the two things he needs to work on is, number one, running the offense with proficiency. And the other is scoring consistently in the paint. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but the number one and the number two words, I think that when you think of what makes an effective point guard, are efficiency and consistency. Those are two things you can't apply to Jeremiah Fears just yet. He's not efficient. He turns the ball over at a really high rate. He did so in Summer League. He did so in the preseason. He's not efficient as a shooter. Okay. Shot 32% from the floor, shot 12.5% from three in the first two games. Did not shoot it well in Summer League. Took a lot of shots in those games where he probably should have taken fewer shots. Only 3 players on the team averaged double-figure field goal attempts, and we'll talk about the other one in just a second. But it's Jeremiah Fears, who was second on the team in field goal attempts behind Trey Murphy, who had 13 in the first game, and then Jordan Hawkins, who finished third with 11 field goal attempts per game. The other two guys were not efficient. Trey Murphy, efficient. The other two guys, not. And that's why they're in the positions they're in of different ways. But it's hard to put Jeremiah Fears on the floor when he's not making shots, either in the paint, because he had struggles to finish at the rim, or from the perimeter, and he's turning the basketball over. And you'd also have to say he's a suspect defender at this stage. If all of those things are the case, you can't give that young man heavy minutes early on. And so when you think about it, he's still behind Jose Alvarado, who shot the ball fairly well over his time in the first two games. Didn't take a lot of shots. Took 6 total, but made 4 of those 6 shots that he did take, including 3 of 5 from three-point range. Just the steadiness of having Jose, who again had a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio in his appearances. Just about, didn't quite exactly get there, but closer to 2-to-1. Forced turnovers as well. When you look at Fears, no steals, 3.5 turnovers per game, only 3 assists per game. Doesn't rebound particularly well. Those are things that just mean you can't be on the floor. Doesn't mean that he's not going to be a star. I'm not saying that at all. I've said repeatedly that I feel like he has all the star qualities that you're looking for, and he has the desire to get better, as has been relayed by the coaches and his teammates and Joe Dumars. But there is a reason that 18-year-old guards just don't get a lot of run in the NBA, and they never have. It is really hard to make that transition, and I think Jeremiah Fears is proof positive of that. Hopefully by November, the end of November, end of December, he's really starting to get his legs under him, and he can start making a positive contribution. But right now, I fear that if he plays any kind of significant minutes, he's going to be a net negative for the Pelicans. For the long term, you absolutely have to have meaningful minutes for him to play. But in the short term, to get off to a good start, there's going to be a lot of nights where he's chained to the bench. He may get some quick time here and there due to foul trouble or rest, but he's not going to get a lot of minutes in the first 10 to 15 games. I just can't see that as far as like being able to help decide games. Moving on to Jordan Hawkins, again, another guy, probably the most prominent Pelican on the edge here of having an NBA career or not. And Jordan was aggressive in both games, and he needed to be aggressive. He's there for one reason and one reason only, to make shots. At this stage, are you worried about him as a passer? No. Are you worried about him as a defender? I know he can't defend. Not worried about those things. He has one job and one job only to make some shots. And again, he didn't do that in these first two games. Maybe he'll do better in the last two. But 25% from 3 out of 12 from beyond the arc, that ain't going to get it done. That ain't going to get it done. At some point, he has to make shots. And he has to prove that he can be consistent in doing so. There is no doubt that Jordan Hawkins can have a good game. We've seen him have a good game. But rarely does he string together 2, 3 good games together. Rarely does he have a good month. So if he can't provide consistency as a shooter, that one thing, if he can't be Craig Hodges, if he can't be Steve Kerr, then he has no purpose. He has no purpose on this team. And after seeing the way Saddiq Bey shot the ball and what he brings to the team off ball, he's going to get the lion's share of those minutes off the bench, playing the 2 or the 3 spot. Jordan Hawkins has a long way to go to show that he deserves regular rotation minutes. You'd be more comfortable putting in Micah Peavy than you would Jordan Hawkins. And I wouldn't have a problem with it. I might think that at this stage, Micah Peavy's looked like the better shooter. Went 3 for 6 from 3-point range in his 2 games. Shot it well during Summer League. So to me, I'd put Micah Peavy ahead of Jordan Hawkins on the bench right now. That's just me. And I know there are people who are still going to ride for Jordan Hawkins until he, isn't on the roster anymore. Or maybe they will after that too. But I just don't see the improvement or the development. He needs to continue to be aggressive over these last 2 games and maybe start making some shots. But that's the only thing that's going to save him at this stage. He's not showing you he can do anything else, so he better make those shots. Finally, Trey Murphy. And I think the thing about Trey is that as we've gotten into this and these expectations for Trey, what we have to remember too is that Trey still sees there are areas where he has to get better. Now, the projections for him this season are that he's going to, have another solid year, that he's going to average over 20 points per game, that he's going to give you about 5 rebounds and 3 assists. That's where the projections are right now. But the big thing for Trey, again, is improving efficiency. This is a guy who shot about 38% from 3 in his career, 40% one season. His second year, he shot above 40%. Last season, he was down to around 36%, the lowest of his career. I think that was a big adjustment, again, in getting player number 1 attention. And he had never gotten that before. He was always able to be the other guy, whether he was playing opposite Zion or whether he was playing opposite Brandon or whether he was playing opposite CJ or whatever. He was the other guy until teams started looking at him as, okay, he's a primary scorer. He's the guy that we have to stop tonight. And that changed the dynamic. And then also he dealt with those injuries, which would impacted him as well. But now that he's back, Trey has said publicly that he needs to get that 3-point percentage up to around 40 again. And I think that's going to be a big part in when we talk about him potentially being all-star, is getting that field goal percentage back up to 40 from beyond the arc. Certainly having Jordan Poole and Zion Williamson will help that, right? It can't help but having Herb Jones helps that, because Herb knows how to make the connecting pass. Being a better defensive team will help that, because that means that Trey will get some looks in transition that are clean instead of before the defense sets. So I think Trey, the thing that you appreciate about him is that he understands where the flaws or the shortcomings in his game are, and he attacks them in the offseason, as you should. You didn't see a ton of pull-up jumpers in the mid-range in that first game. You saw Trey attacking the basket. You saw him taking threes. but you saw him willing to put the ball on the floor when defenses closed out because he's worked on that. Because he's looking for those opportunities to put the ball on the floor and then read the defense. Is it collapsing? Is it closing? Is it opening up something for someone else? He's becoming far more adept at those situations. So when you look at the overall improvement for Trey Murphy, it's an understanding of what he does need to do to get better. It's not simply getting better at shooting. It's not simply getting better at defense. He looks at the particular skills within those things and says, this part of it is what I need to improve. And identifying, and I think this comes from his competition that was friendly with CJ McCollum when it came to single season 3-point and career 3-pointers for the Pelicans. You know, Trey probably break that this year. But with the way that it's going, I think that competition, that consistent push to make yourself the best possible player you can be, is symbolic of who Trey Murphy is. This is a young man who was not a 5-star prospect coming out of high school, who went to a mid-major university in Rice to start his career, finishes in the ACC playing for one of the best programs in the country at Virginia, comes to the NBA as the first-round pick, but you didn't know what was expected of him really when he came out of school. And now he is a huge part of the Pelicans' present and future. And he's done that in an organization that has never really centered him until now. You know, I think the organization had what it was dealing with Brandon, it was dealing with Zion, it was dealing with all these other things. And Trey was, in some ways, an organizational afterthought rather than someone that people viewed early on within the organization, it seemed, as a key building block. He was a good player, I think the organization saw, but I don't think they saw initially the star potential there. Well, now everyone has recognized it across the league. He's no longer the best kept secret in the NBA. And I think Trey wants to prove that he shouldn't have been a secret at any point. So the word's out. All right, that'll do it for today. Again, I'll be back next week, as I get myself adjusted to the new location and the new jobs and all those things. But I will be back here next week to talk about the Pelicans, particularly after that next preseason game when they face the Rockets on Tuesday. So, I'll be here to discuss those things. But I just want to say again, thank you to Boot Crew Media, Justin, Ross, Chris, Lito, Jarrett, Chaz, everybody, Lala. Again, it's not over, but I just want to thank them, for everything that they've done as far as getting me into this spot and helping me reach this new audience. And I just want to thank all the fans for the support that I've gotten, whether it's been on social media, people I've actually run into on the street and things like that. I just appreciate everything y'all have done for me and just the encouragement that you've given me in a profession that can be very difficult at times. New Orleans is always going to be home. My, parents still live here. And my daughter's still going to be a resident of the state while I do what I need to do. So I will be back, but this is a bittersweet day. I guess I'm kind of dragging this out because I know when it's over, it's over. When I turn this off, this will be the last time I finish something up in this studio. So it's kind of emotional, but again, thank you to the fans. Y'all have made this worth it. And I appreciate you. So for Boot Crew Media, I am David Grubb. You can follow me on social media at DM Grubb, wherever you go. And until the next time, this has been The Post Up. I'm David Grubb. You're you. Have a great day.